Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and Hasbro's decision to fire the Latin America localization team. All right, and the reason they did it, and what it means for Dungeons and Dragons overall, and really what it means for the tabletop role-playing game industry. Okay, so let's jump into this. So first of all, this information comes from Teos Abadia and Sean Merwin. These guys are absolutely amazing. They're the best. I think they are the best D&D journalism group. But actually, what's really sad is they don't even. I actually talked with them directly, and Teos Abadia actually qualified and said, "I don't actually consider. We don't actually consider ourselves D&D journalists. Literally every single week, they do a half an hour that's called D&D News. They do it very rigorously. They do a great job, and they still don't think that they are D&D journalists, right? Which is really sad, because we have D&D journalists right now who don't identify as D&D journalists. We have a lot of this going on in tabletop role-playing games. Total Party Skills, King Waspinator, total OSR commentator. I had a conversation with him in his comments, and he's like, "I'm not an OSR commentator. I only write an OSR game, publish an OSR game, published an OSR game, and currently publish an OSR game. I'm not an OSR voice. I'm just an OSR publisher." Like, there's all these people are doing the thing and don't want to own the title, right? And the reason why is you have responsibilities. The second you slap a journalist onto yourself, you got some responsibilities. Like, people protect sources, like it's a whole thing, right? And if you say I'm an OSR voice, you own a lot of the junk that's coming out under the OSR, including a lot of the hate that the OSR spreads, in my humble opinion, right? Like, you're not responsible for it, but you identify with it, right? You're essentially an ally, right? Like, so yeah, I get it. I get why people are like, "Oh no, I'm not an OSR voice. I'm just an OSR publisher," right? Ridiculous. Anyway, let's keep moving. All right. So basically, you have this situation, right, where so Teos Abadia and Sean Merwin gave this news that Hasbro fired the D&D Latin America localization team. Right now, what is this team? First of all, their job was to convert everything, translate everything, right? And that translation, it's not just the D&D canon hardbacks. There's a lot of material, like it's D&D Beyond, it's all the products, right? Like what products are going to be released there, sold there, right? So this localization team, this was a team that would actually localize the D&D product for Latin America, put it in their language. And even with products like they have different beliefs than we have, right? So, like, for instance, what does the Pantheon mean? Like, some of the gods that might be in D&D could be incredibly offensive because they believe different things about life and death, right? All kinds of. So the localization team would have a lot to do. Hasbro fired them all, right? They fired everybody. They fired everybody in the Latin American localization team except Brazil, and they just fired Brazil, right? Why? Well, here's the thing. Dungeons and Dragons is an element of Americana, right? And the reality is, because Dungeons and Dragons was born in America, right? When other countries simply don't have the infrastructure to deal with Dungeons and Dragons, and the reason why is Dungeons and Dragons is the absolute pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy. And we have countries in the world where, like in America, we have solved these problems, right? We have solved, tell me if I'm wrong, this is just my humble opinion, I'm going to say it right now, right? Maslow's hierarchy. Do you have food? Do you have shelter? Do you have safety? America's got it all. We got so much food that here the poor people are big, right? Okay, like that's how much food we got. Even if you got money, it's more likely that you are too big than too small, right? Like, and that's if you're poor, right? Like, it's amazing, right? That's a good problem to have, in my humble opinion, right? And then shelter, okay? Yes, we absolutely have homeless people in America, but it is incredibly rare to have anybody who's homeless who doesn't have a problem with one intoxicating substance or another. So many people, and actually this is my humble opinion, I don't think we have any homeless problem in America. What we have is an intoxication problem. We have a myriad of substances that people get addicted to and become intoxicated every single day. And we have an intoxication problem to the point where so many people are intoxicated they really can't function enough to have homes, right? But if you we absolutely have a huge addiction problem in America, right? But how many people are homeless in America that don't have addiction problems? It's incredibly rare. It's incredible. It's pretty rare. So we do have an addiction problem, but generally we don't have a homeless problem. We do have people living in their cars. That's not a good home, right? And that does need to get fixed. But generally, we still don't have a strong homeless problem. You can come at me in comments if you think I disagree with that, right? Safety, ain't no country in the world safer, right? People don't even imagine walking on American soil, and we haven't had a boot on the ground in like 2 centuries, right? We will straight wreck you, trust and believe, right? Now we got a few people sending some stuff into doing some airspace invasions, and we might have to handle that, right? But we ain't there yet, right? But trust and believe when it comes to safety, oh yeah, right? So the reality is America, and so America loves D&D and buys the heck out of D&D, right? Because we're dealing with things that are at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. And we're like, we've solved all these problems, right? Like, and I think that's why localization has never worked for Dungeons and Dragons. We had a localization team in Britain, failed, right? We had a localization team in Latin America, packed up, and so they Hasbro took the time to create a localization team, and Latin America was like, no thanks, we don't want D&D, we don't care enough about it to make sales here worth your localization cost, right? That's a pretty bad response, right? Now I do think there is a strong response right now to Dungeons and Dragons in Japan, right? And there are strong responses in other countries. But guess what? It's all being played. It's almost all being played in English, right? And so one, D&D, what D&D has realized is they're like, we don't need to localize anything, right? People will literally learn English to play Dungeons and Dragons. People will learn English just to be closer to America, right? Like, just to, like, not by proximity, but by by empathy, essentially, you know what I mean? And that is the reality is, and frankly, kind of English is a very strong language in the world, if not the number one language of influence in the world, right? So I think this is really fascinating. Now, what's really more interesting is, again, Dungeons and Dragons crushes, right? And the OGLers and the OSRs and the orcs and all the D&D haters, right? All that live within those camps, right? Y'all suck, because you ain't got no localization teams. There ain't no localization team for OSC, DCC, or Pathfinder. Y'all suck, right? Catch up. Get good. Y'all suck, and I'm coming at you, right? Like, because in the 2023 Manic Panic, y'all's were like, D&D be gone. Y'all's can get good. Y'all's suck. You are so far behind Dungeons and Dragons, you don't even have localization teams. We just canceled ours, right? But at least we tried. We're failing at stuff you don't even try at. Get good. OGL, OSR, Orcs, y'all's suck. Step up, right? If you're going to pretend to even attempt to replace Dungeons and Dragons, start putting your big girl pants on and acting like real businesses. Every word of that is my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.